Connecticut, we age well, we age well, we all can. In Connecticut, we age well in every town across the lifespan.
Welcome to the Age Well Academy, celebrating that our communities are stronger when we all belong. The Age Well Academy is produced by the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative, a statewide cross-sector initiative that fosters aging, dementia, and disability-inclusive communities.
The Connecticut Age Well Collaborative is an initiative of
Connecticut Community Care, identifying choices and providing services and supports to help people of all ages, abilities, ethnicities, and incomes live their best lives at home.
We're also generously supported by
the Point 32 Health Foundation,
along with
the State Department of Aging and Disability Services,
and a growing number of funders and partners. This year, the Age Well Academy focuses on how your community can take action. Together, we'll examine neighborhood-level data available for every city and town in the state. We'll explore how local governments and community residents can build bridges to co-create more vibrant, accessible communities. We'll journey inward, examining our own minds and hearts as we work together to dismantle ageism, and we'll uplift amazing, inclusive places right here in Connecticut. Welcome to the Age Well Academy.
Good morning. Welcome, everyone. My name is Karen Green. I'm the Administrative Coordinator for the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative. In alignment with our commitment to emphasize access, equity, and inclusion, we are modeling best practices for a virtual presentation. We have enabled our closed captions. We will be describing images and other visual content that's displayed to assist anyone with a visual or cognitive disability. Those speaking should remember to identify themselves prior to their comments. Wherever possible, we have used a minimum font size of 22 in our slides, and a link to the recording and any link shared today will be made available to attendees. If you need materials in a particular format, please let us know. We are learning and it's a work in progress, so we appreciate any feedback on how we can do it better. If you want more information on creating and presenting in an accessible format, please contact us at ctagewell@ctcommunitycare.org. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Alyssa Norwood, the Director of the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative.
Hi, Karen. Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here, for sharing the preciousness of your time. For those of you who can't see me, I am wearing glasses and have dark curly hair with bits of gray and white blooming in it and a big smile on my face because this is a space of a lot of joy for me. Your being here and your willingness to engage in this topic of connection, capacity, resilience, and vibrancy. What's age got to do with it? And I begin my day, I think, with a lot of people trying to minimize news consumption with a check of news in the morning. And a few days ago, there was an article about social connection, and there's a line that really gripped me. And the line was, "We increasingly avoid ties of mutual obligation in favor of frictionless transactions." I really felt that land in my body, this idea of we want frictionless transactions and we avoid ties of mutual obligation. So you could think of what that feels like for you. If you're somebody who is privileged enough to be able to travel on an airplane, is there a moment where you might have called someone and asked for a ride, but now you call an Uber or a Lyft because we don't want to disturb? And why am I talking about this? And I think it speaks to this general societal notion of independence, self-reliance, and it becomes really problematic and challenging to rest in our strength, which is ever present. We all have some aspect of strength as the process of moving through life, of being in a body that gets older and changes over time, inevitably means that we'll have moments of up and moments of down and a real need to rest in our mutuality. So I just ask you to hold that in your mind and remember that as we move through these slides and think about this question of how much am I afraid of asking for help or being perceived as weak? So hold that question in your heart as I set up an exciting conversation that we have today with a couple of towns who participated this past year in a 1 year journey with us. So for those of you who are new to this space, I work for Connecticut Community Care. It's my privilege to work for Connecticut Community Care, which for more than 40 years has been working to promote this honoring of independence for people that choose to live their best lives at home and in community rather than in institutional settings where it's possible to remain at home. And Connecticut Community Care established the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative as a way to begin conversation with local governments, recognizing that for all the investment that we might make in a person's home environment, that we're all bound up in each other, we're all connected. And for somebody to truly thrive, the entirety of the community needs to be supportive of our process across the lifespan. And how we do this work shows up through a number of different programs. And through the Age Well Academy, we're highlighting our work in different areas. But the overarching thread and theme that really runs through everything that we do is we're a builder of relationships. And specifically, we build bridges between local governments and older adults in the community with lived experience. And through that co-creative process, are working to dismantle ageism in the state of Connecticut. And the question might be, well, why? Why is that such a deep focus? We live in a highly complex world with so many problems and so many policy challenges. Why focus on ageism? And those of you who have been in this space before might be familiar with this framework, but it's worth revisiting. There was a seminal article published about 7 years ago now called The Waters of Systems Change. And as part of that article, there rests an image, which if you're not seeing it on the screen, is an inverted pyramid. And at the top of this upside down pyramid are the places that most of us focus our time and our energy and our resources. And that's in affecting policy change. It's in affecting practices, and it's thinking about primarily money, but all different kinds of resources. How do resources flow? And that kind of explicit change is really the focal point of advocacy. But as you move down this inverted pyramid, it's recognizing that all of those spaces are influenced by conditions underneath. So directly under policy practices and resource flows, how those things happen and why they manifest are a product of relationships and connections and power dynamics, right? There are certain influencers that are causing change. And then underneath that are our mental modes. So, what are the deeply held implicit beliefs that we all show up in the world with? And, they're a result of causes and conditions. So, our minds are these recording devices. And in a very young age, we're taking in all of these. Okay. Sorry, I had a brief message that I was being muted, so I just wanted to.
Sorry, Alyssa, that was my fault. I was trying to let someone in and I hit the wrong button. My apologies.
It's all good. It's all good. Everyone needs a voice, so I got to pause mine. So there are these mental modes. Our brain is a recording device, right? We're taking in information as a child and we're trying to figure out what does it look like to survive and effectively move through the world. So depending on my particular conditioning and what messages I was taught in my young childhood, therefore carries forward, maybe in an unexamined way, in terms of how I show up in the world and how I interact with all kinds of people, including older adults. So we have a number of programs that invite us into those spaces because we might not realize that information that we coded at 3, 4, 5, 7 years old from our family members, our relationships, from society writ large, is unconsciously driving policies, practices, and resource flows in ways that might not be an optimal honoring and might not be advancing the best possible outcomes for people across the lifespan. So it's powerful to take a look at those areas. And it's the reason that we established a campaign to help disrupt ageism. And its often closely bound up cousin, ableism. So we define these two terms as the systematic stereotyping, discrimination, and oppression of older people and people with disabilities. And why talk about both of them? Because loss of ability isn't an inevitable result of aging. It's not quite that linear. It's certainly true that over time our bodies change, but there are many older adults that live thriving lives with thriving bodies and thriving minds at the end of life. And there are those of us that will have moments where ability shifts over time in a way that's not correlated with age. So the reason we talk about both of them is oppression is intersectional and interlocking. There's a similar root cause. We just touched on this notion of there being correlation, but not necessarily causation. And this last one is the most interesting. A common response to ageism is ableism. So someone who has had negative experiences as a result of walking through the world as an older adult might say, I'm old, but at least I'm not in a wheelchair. Or similarly, somebody who's in a wheelchair and is a user of a wheelchair might say, well, at least I'm not old. So there's this mutuality of oppression that can happen. And how do we begin naming that so that we can work together to address the larger societal container that we oversubscribe and we overinvest to this idea that doing and productivity are somehow better than simply just this innate being in our humanity. So big questions. And it led us to this space where we really needed to help people, all of us, delve in and start having conversations. So we started developing a statewide campaign to address ageism and ableism. And here's how we did it. So on the screen, on the far right, are a number of different images of all different kinds of people across the spectrum of age and ability, and with a number of different other identities, right? Because as humans, we all have multiple identities. And one idea or concept that we had is that we would have a slogan that says, this is a, and insert a word, an artist, an athlete, a mother, with images that might, because of stereotypes, invite people into a place of a little cognitive dissonance. If I see a photograph of somebody who's an amputee with the phrase, this is an athlete, that might be a violation of my societally conditioned expectations of what an athlete looks like. So the idea would be to invite somebody into this space of, the word that I'm seeing or experiencing and the image that I'm seeing or is being described to me, somehow there's a mismatch. Isn't that interesting? Why is that? So that was what the initial goal of the campaign was, to create a space where somebody would be invited into a right? Moment. And this iteration had the tagline, shift your perspective on age and abilities. This was one concept. And then the other concept was centered around this idea of we are, and words like joyful, creative, and again, this idea of cognitive dissonance. Do the images match the words in terms of the way that you're conditioned? So I want to invite you all into a space of questions, and you can do this in a self-reflective way, or you can put your answers into the chat, but ask you a couple of different questions. So the first question, and if you can see the images, great. If you need a description, please let me know in the chat and I'll describe. But the group of people that you've seen on the previous two slides, how would you describe this group of people? So just take a moment, reflect on it, and if anything's coming up for you, please put your answers in the chat. And we'll wait about a minute for some chat activity, and then we'll move on to another question. So just take a moment. How would you describe this group of people? And don't think too much either, right? Just like the first words that come to your mind. Great. Awesome. I see a lot of positive language. This is also a self-selected group, right? Not everyone leans into the positive, but that's wonderful. So keep going with that if you're still reflecting on that question. And then the next question, which again you can answer just for yourself or in the chat to be part of the community, is as you age, what words, there's a typo there, I should say, what words do you hope people will use to describe you? So as you age, what words do you hope people will use to describe you? Oh, there's some great words. I see helpful, engaged, happy, fun. I love silly. Yes. Joyful, satisfied. That's fantastic. And then the last question is if we were at the beginning of this process and we were newly creating the campaign, I'll show you where we landed. What types of images would you like to see in a campaign that's promoting a conversation around moving into older adulthood and dismantling ageism? What types of images would you like to see? So you can reflect or you can share. Okay, we'll distribute the slides afterwards. It's an interesting conversation if any of you are in local government and in a context where you're in a staff meeting or elsewhere in public. It's an interesting way to start dialogue, so feel free to use these questions in your own life. I want to take you into our own campaign where folks answered these questions. We did a statewide survey. And the words that they came up with were vibrant, connected, resilient, and capable. In terms of images, people wanted, rather than headshots, people wanted images where they were doing things, where there were other people around, maybe pets. And then I'll note it because I see it in the chat here in terms of the words that you want to be described. One of the words that did come up with surprising frequency was youthful. And I think that's a common response, but it's a really interesting paradox if you think about it. How do you want to be described when you get old? I want to be described as young really points to the vast stigma of what it is to be an older adult, right? So what success might look like is can we get culture to a place where we ask, how do you want to be described as you age? And when I get older, I want to be described as old, right? Because there's something positive about it. Cooperate with reality that we don't want to be described as what maybe we're not. But maybe young is different than youthful. That's a conversation we can have. But here's what we came up with. So some of the photos you saw in our landscape when we initially surveyed people, but we had two different versions of the campaign. One had multiple images on the same poster and this idea of we are vibrant, and to ask again in that space, is this Is this what you thought of when the word vibrant comes to mind? Are these the folks that first come to mind? And if not, why is that? Um, Connected was the second one. So you could take this in, and again, we'll distribute this later. Resilient was a third, and then capable was the last. So these posters were a springboard, and I'm delighted Mayor Lesser of Wethersfield is here with us today. And they were the first town in the state of Connecticut to have a set of these posters and display them around town. And begin a meaningful conversation. And we encourage all of you to start a conversation. So we'll share links at the end, but one step that you can take today is you can start a conversation in your community using these posters. So we have a conversation guide that you can download from our website. It includes 8.5 and 11 sheets of paper with all of these posters, as well as some tips for creating safe space for a conversation. You can spend 5 or 10 minutes with a friend, family member, or neighbor, or you could bring this into a meeting setting for 30 or even 60 minutes. And there are some questions to invite people into the space of exploration. So some of those questions are, who in these photos would you most want to spend time with? What about them draws you? So you can think about that one. At what age do you consider someone to be old? And has your definition of old changed over time? That's a fascinating question. I'm sure you can reflect at different moments on your life as a child, right? Who was old to you versus now versus in 10 years? And then who in these posters looks old to you? What makes you think they are old? So this is a very interesting way to start getting in and under and taking a look at what our unconscious biases are. But the hope and the aspiration of launching this campaign is this would just be a beginning, and that ultimately we would translate and empower towns to translate this statewide campaign into locally based efforts that reflected words chosen by members of the community, and that would also reflect not stock photography, but images of people actually in town. So we're really excited to share that our 2025 fellowship, which just came to an end, reflected a journey by Newtown and West Hartford to dive deep and to create their own versions of a campaign. So I'm going to start by showing you what they did and then also name that this was a process much more than a product. So we'll celebrate the product, and then I'm excited to share folks from West Hartford and Newtown who can speak in their own words about their journey. But these are posters from the town of Newtown. So they selected their own words, and the images are all places selected by community residents in partnership with local government. And there's a whole strategy and rollout that's in the works. So these are Newtown's posters. And then these are West Hartford's posters, again, featuring places in the community, words selected by the residents, and images of the residents. So with that, I want to invite our panelists to come on screen. Please turn your cameras on. So excited to have you. So welcome to Robin, Nancy, and Adrian. Robin, let's start with you. If you could each introduce yourselves, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you for having us. Hi, I'm Robin Clare. I'm the Executive Director of the Seniors Job Bank in West Hartford, Connecticut. We serve the greater Hartford County. And I was interested in coming on board because I love the mission of the organizations, and it's in alignment with what we're doing. And so I thought this was the place for me to be and to become a fellow for the Age Well Collaborative.
Fantastic, Robin. We're so glad you're here. And Adrian.
Good morning, everyone. Adrian Billing-Smith here. I am with the town of West Hartford. I run the Office of Employee Development and Community Engagement. Just like Robin, the Age Well Collaborative, when I first was introduced to it, really spoke to me because I want to ensure that all of our residents have a voice in how they age. through in our town. So being able to collaborate with Age Well Collaborative and also our fellows was an opportunity to get great information on how to better serve everyone in our town.
Great, Adrian, thanks for being here. And Nancy.
I'm Nancy Kessler and I live in Newtown. I'm a new person to Newtown, so I moved here 5 years ago. And I write memoirs and collect wisdom from some people who are very close to 100 or over 100 years old. So I am interested in building community. As a new person to Connecticut, I'm learning the structure of the government. And I was a fellow for a year, and I found it a really rewarding experience in getting to know my fellow Newtown residents and the West Hartford people.
That's great. Well, thank you all for continuing to be generous with your time, right? The fellowship was a year-long experience, but our vision in creating a fellowship program is that there would be ongoing engagement. So you're being here today, 2026, after the end of your fellowship year is a testament to what we've set in motion. Adrian, I want to begin with you, and you spoke to this a little bit when you introduced yourself, but could you share a little bit more on why West Hartford wanted to create its own campaign?
I think for West Hartford, we're always looking for ways to engage our community. And working with my colleague who isn't on the call, Rebecca Sears, engaging on needs of older adults, it gave us an opportunity to dig deeper. I think that our senior services division does an amazing job, and we wanted to figure out ways to engage. West Hartford, I think we said it's 27% of our population is over the age of 60. We are identifying spaces to grow. So joining the campaign and the fellowship was an opportunity to help us try to figure out ways to fill that gap and what our next steps would be as a community to ensure that older adults continue to have a space to age, have social opportunities, job opportunities. So we want to be intentional about how we're serving in our community.
That's great. And as a follow-up question to that, so we've talked in other webinars about the difference between community informed and community driven, right? So those are both forms of community engagement. So it would have been a perfectly reasonable way. You talked about wanting to engage the community that you could have sat down with other folks in municipal government, Rebecca at the senior center, and otherwise you could have set up a framework and then you could have just had a call for a photo shoot and people could have come for a day. You could have collected pictures and there certainly would have been an efficiency to that, right? And you would have gotten the same product. Yet you chose to participate in this year-long fellowship. What do you think, or is there, not is there necessarily, but is there a value, and if so, why, in not just doing this on your own, but operating in a more community-driven model? What was your experience of that?
Well, me personally, and obviously professionally, I always think that community driven, you're going to get the best result because you're going to get the most authentic result. People who have to navigate personalities, you're navigating relationships with your neighbors when you're doing it this way. Doing a call for community photo, as you're saying, you come in, you do what you're asked to do, and then you leave. And there's no engagement piece. I think if you're community driven, you're trying to create spaces where people get to know each other. So there's less bias. There's more opportunity to learn from one another. You're not stuck in your own bubble or in your own head of what's acceptable within your community or what you thought was acceptable in your community. It it creates, again, opportunities to truly engage and learn with one another. So I think when you're talking about informed, yeah, you could do just quick, hey, let's get together, have this committee and not even a committee, have this event and then go home. Yeah, you will get the same outcome, but it won't be authentic and you won't get the buy-in from the community because all they expect to do is show up and go home. Whereas when you have people who have to buy into like the fellowship program, there were elements to it that you had to show up, you had to engage with your neighbors and other community members and people who are serving you in your town and other towns, right? Because your community, your direct community might be West Hartford, but to be able to do portions of this with Newtown was important because Connecticut is also your community.
That's great. And Adrian, thank you for naming the co-creative piece. So each town works with municipal fellows, folks who are in municipal government, and community fellows, older adults in community over the age of 60 with lived experience of aging. But you named that multiple towns are in the same room, so there's peer learning component. Nancy, as someone from Newtown, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your experience, both in terms of what it was like for you to partner with people in municipal government in Newtown, as well as what it was like to have other towns in the room for peer learning and support.
I found the sessions really helpful in that I got to know what people were doing in their own communities and how they were interacting with each other. So I learned a lot about the structure of government, and I got to know some of the leaders, not only in my own town, but also in West Hartford. Um, I meet so many elders who feel isolated, neglected, ignored, and they're not always part of an organized community center. So I really try to find solutions to including them. And that's part of why I like getting their stories because we've all been to the memorial service where you hear about a person's life and didn't know that who they were. So I feel that by sharing stories with a lot of these people, we do build community and value.
And Nancy, I also just want to name your own contributions, right? So the part of this process was for town governments coming into relationship with people in community to start regarding older adults not just as lived experience experts, but being able to offer whatever the gifts and talents are you've amassed over your life. So, Nancy, do you want to share a little bit about your role in terms of the storytelling with respect to Newtown's campaign?
So I recently started gardening, and so I learned a new skill, and I've incorporated it in eating out of my freezer right now, fresh vegetables. So the word under my poster is growing, and I feel that I'm always learning and collecting wisdom and becoming wiser.
That's great. I'm resharing. I love that we can all see each other, but I just want people to get the visual again of what it is that folks did in Newtown. And Robin, I'm gonna go to West Hartford's in a moment, but I wonder if you could share a little bit more in terms of your experience. You know, what was rewarding about being a fellow and arriving at a moment of being part of this campaign in a really public way, right? There's something vulnerable in that, and what might have been challenging about it.
There really wasn't much challenging. It was so rewarding, and it was interesting to see the images that people would pick. The woman in the pool has Parkinson's. The man digging dirt is well into his 80s. The motorcycle rider had many different activities that she was involved with. So it was interesting to see what people would choose as their image, and when you got to choose your own words and image.
And Robin, what about for
Yes.
you?
Yeah. So about the picture, the picture process also was really fun. We spent the day, a good part of the day, going to different parts of town and figuring out what really resonated with us. We can see folks in the library. We can see one of our fellows who just is a really fun guy. Another one is truly a rebel. I've known her forever. And then for me, I was spend a lot of time in the supermarket. And I love flowers. And so for me, that was a great location for me. I loved being in all those flowers. And innovative is something that I really honor in myself and in the work that I'm doing at the Seniors Job Bank.
I so appreciate it. And Robin, something that you mentioned in the process all of this, and I wonder if you could say a little bit more about it when we first met, that I so enjoyed when we were talking about what you learned. And you said that you had more of a sense of honoring aging versus
Yeah,
being afraid of it. And I wonder if you could speak to your experience of
yeah,
arriving there.
yeah. Because we at the seniors job bank, we see people come in so afraid of ageism. And so, we spend a lot of our time looking at, what can we do to help people not experience ageism in the workplace? And so then I come into this process, and there's so many vibrant seniors in the process who are engaged in different ways of connecting with community, involved in the town governments, involved as like Nancy is a writer. It was just so inspiring to see everybody and how they're disrupting ageism in their own lives, in the government, in schools, in whatever they're involved in. And so I was really excited about that. I also was very proud of West Hartford for and I guess Newtown too, even though I don't live there, because part of the process was to do like an inventory of how the towns engage with in the areas of adults with who are of a certain age, as well as adults with disabilities. And both towns had such vibrant programs related to supporting their folks that live there. And so that gave me a sense of pride too, that we really honor this group that we're trying to support here.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that your being here is really a testament to the fact that even though you participated in something from a year, that the Connecticut Age Well
Mm.
Collaborative's intention was to really initiate a process that's ongoing. I wonder if you could each speak to the now what, right? So you have these posters, and what now, and what is the intention? What is the aspiration, and what does forward movement and momentum look like to keep this conversation going in a really self-sustaining way, and also to leverage the relationships that you all built with each other?
Yeah. So I think what I would like to do is Adrian and Becky Sears have another group that they have formed, and every one of the fellows went to help them in this next round of working and looking at and help and for our senior population. And so I'm going to turn this over to Adrian because I think that was very interesting how we all we all said, yes, let's move over here now and help as well.
Thank you, Robin. Yeah, so in West Hartford, doing the fellowship program, also we did Daring Dialogues. So we've kind of been on this journey of supporting our older adults. So going from the fellowship program, we did ask our fellows would they be interested in joining a committee because we are going for the AARP Age Friendly Communities initiative. So that's surveying, that's creating a strategic plan. And we thought that was a great next step. With that piece, with the photos, right? The photos led us to go, okay, how can we let people see what we've been doing and how many people are engaged in this. So we also are creating on our main street. If you come down West Hartford in the spring, you will see a photo campaign where people will be called out, but you will have our Age Well fellows who will be the center of this campaign, speaking to aging well in West Hartford, aging and growing well in West Hartford, and also an opportunity to introduce the survey for the AARP initiative, which I think go hand in hand together. Because again, we want to make sure that what we're doing in West Hartford isn't for a photo opportunity, but for a chance to actually create real effective and intentional change in order for us to be a better and better service to our entire population and a focus and in this conversation to our older adult population. So we want to ensure that we're doing everything that we can to get those voices heard and making sure vulnerable populations are having their voices heard so that we create a space, a community where people can continue to grow. And I think that's what this fellowship gave us an opportunity engaging with Robin, Gail, Kevin, Diane, like an opportunity to say, hey, we want to keep going. What's next, as you said, Alyssa, and this gives us an opportunity to continue that and then create an action plan that will go, years beyond of what we're doing in our community.
That's wonderful. And Adrienne, something that you had mentioned to me when we were preparing that I'm excited about is that there's an opportunity that you're imagining in West Hartford for people to send photos to answer these questions of how do you want to be described as you age and to really
Yeah.
start shifting the narrative and to make aging something not to be feared, right? Speaking of unconscious drivers, fear of death is a big one
Mhm.
for all of us. Loss of independence, which is the conversation we started with, is a big one. And not to sugarcoat aging, for all of us that live in a body, it's really hard work sometimes to have a body, but how with fortitude and grace to claim the strength and the parts of ourselves that grow over time, right? It's not all decay. There are aspects of my being I would never want to go back to an earlier stage of life because I so celebrate what I have now, and we don't have a culture that necessarily supports that narrative. So I love what you're doing. Nancy, do you want to speak a little bit more in your discussions with your group in Newtown now that you have these posters? What does movement building, what does creating change look like there?
Well, we made a big list of places where we would like to see these posters, and the posters are, I think, about 6 feet high, and they're very visible. And we have a long list, including library, town centers, but also like our local um, favorite ice cream place. It was really interesting to see where we could affect people and get all ages to look at older fellows. And that list was very informative for me as to where the community gathers.
Mm. I loved watching Newtown's process because if I recall, one of the first conversations is where will these posters go? The senior center, right? Well, that's nice. Absolutely. Older adults should see and celebrate, but what does change making look like? Does it look like showing these posters to the population that knows well what it is to experience the joy of reclaiming the narrative, the marginalization that society is constantly pushing, or is it the ice cream shop? So that creativity of mapping was such an important part of the process.
Right. We picked a lot of places where young children would see it and families.
That's fantastic. I want you all to stay on camera. I briefly want to share a couple more slides, and then I want to open up the conversation to discussion and questions. So if any of you have any questions for our panelists, you can start thinking about them now and put them in the chat, or I'll ask you to come on screen. But in the meantime, I just want to initiate some not just conversation around what happened already in West Hartford and Newtown, but to have some brainstorming around what creating your own campaign could look like. So we've played with this at the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative and said, well, what's the next step for us? So at the beginning of the presentation, you saw 4 posters that constitute the core of the original statewide Every Age, Every Ability campaign that had images and words selected by residents. So these are 3 different photographs mashed together. The middle panel is a piece of artwork that we commissioned by a local artist that is inspired by the words and images of our original statewide campaign. And it's made from an old trunk. So the idea that things that are old are of value and can be beautiful, and that there's a constant intelligent evolution and graceful repurposing of different things at different stages. It's hard to tell in this kind of two-dimensional space, but there are both tiny circular mirrors as well as holes in this artwork, and you really have to look closely. If you walk around it, you can look through the holes, or some things are reflected back. So this idea of playing with perception, right? Things aren't always what they seem. So it's a really fun conversation piece. And to us, it's potentially a catalyzer for what does it look like in community for people to come together and not just create posters, but maybe create communally made pieces of public art that are conversation pieces around this topic. So we intend in our next fellowship to bring this piece, to bring it to different events that we do to start catalyzing conversations. And just some additional ideas to get you going, both from within the state and beyond, is there at the national level are some tools around how we talk about older adults, right? So one really concrete tip is to shift to a we kind of narrative, right? Older adults are not an other. Those frail people over there are different than me is a very self-protective, unconscious thing we do when we're fearful of aging. So how do we talk about our shared experience of aging? We're all doing it from the moment we're born. We're aging. It is a natural process of living, and that we have somehow medicalized it or decided that aging is something to conquer is part of the narrative we need to undo. So writing a style guide for how to talk about older adults is a great first step. Newtown has also, not through the fellowship, but has had a series of events at its local library, and that can be emulated by others where people can learn through having a series of book talks and getting people thinking. We've hosted events called Daring Dialogues where municipal leaders and community members come together to talk about the universal experience of ageism. If we're all lucky enough to live into older adulthood, we will all experience this form of oppression. What does it look like to talk about it? A free framing aging campaign in your community with age positive messaging, or the posters. So I'll stop the share there and invite you all to either ask questions of our panelists or alternatively to share what idea you might have in terms of a next step your community can take to start a conversation and ultimately we hope dismantle ageism. So I'll put it out to all of you and I'll check the chat. And I also invite all of you, please turn your cameras on if you're in a position to. It's just so nice to be able to see each other. Okay, so I see a question. Hi, Nancy, Happy New Year. In Newtown, is Esmond Town Hall live performance series, movies, private events? Representative Belinsky, is that your question? Feel free to unmute yourself. Do you want to ask it live?
I'm sorry. This is Mitch Belinsky. I just wanted to say hello and Happy New Year to everybody, actually. But Edmond Town Hall is a really incredible hub of activity now for all ages. I just wanted to check with Nancy to see if that's one of the places where we're displaying one of the posters.
Yes, I don't think they're up yet, but they will be for sure. They're at that location, and there have been many events, including a town book read that was on aging unmasked and the children's book about ages.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Are we also, will we perhaps consider talking to the Arts Commission and letting them comp us a poster at the Arts Festival?
For sure, definitely.
Cool.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So to everyone else who's here, what's something you're curious about, or what's one next step that you feel like your community might be able to take? I see a question from Sarah. Can Portland get involved in an initiative? The answer is yes. Our last slide, which I'll post in about 5 minutes, and there are some links there as well. We'll talk about ways specific to the Age Well Collaborative that you can get involved, but we view ourselves as a convener and a facilitator and a catalyzer. So at any moment, right, tomorrow, you can go off and running with this. But yes, we're happy to share more specifically on how Portland can get involved through us. Something else I'll name, and again, please keep the questions coming. So this is a space of a lot of positivity. It's the way the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative holds itself in our work, but this isn't easy, and not enough, not enough conversation has happened yet around obstacles. And some things I want to name, and Adrian, Nancy, and Robin, you can chat about them too. So there was a product for sure, right? This beautiful set of posters and some next steps, but really the process, right? Deepening relationships between municipal government and members of community with lived experience who don't typically have a voice was the goal. Nancy and Robin, you're both engaged, have some confidence and comfort. So one of our growing edges, both happening now and also continuing in the future, is making sure that our recruitment really is working on trust building and bringing fellows into the program who aren't already engaged with municipal government. So, wondering if you have thoughts on what drew you to the fellowship and what might have been unique in terms of your privilege, why this felt easy to participate in, and others in the community might not have felt emboldened to apply.
Yes. Oh, sorry, Nancy. Go ahead.
I felt really honored to be a fellow, and it was a fantastic way for me to be welcomed into the community because I am relatively new, and to understand what people's roles are, and also meet other fellows in the process. The process was really engaging. It wasn't demanding in any way. It was maybe a few full days of work, or not even full days, but it was fun for me. And really, I enjoyed getting to know more about my community.
Yeah, so for me, I previously shared it was something that I thought I was doing to give me some ideas, some innovative ideas for the seniors job bank. Yet when I got there and I was able to interact with the folks that were there, I knew that it was more than just that for me. It was a way to engage with other seniors, which was nice. And it was and seeing how vibrant everyone still is, and how active they are and friendly. And so that was really nice. And I have had interactions with folks outside of fellows. And I'm looking forward to continuing to interact with those folks and bringing some of the things that we learned into to the community.
Great. Adrian, do you want to have a last word on that? Do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think for me, when you talk about engagement, being civically engaged is you have to be intentional about it, and you have to have the access to do so, and those sorts of things. So in my current position, trying to find people who may not be, you start off with the low-hanging fruit of people who are engaged. You're like, yeah, come on, let's do this. But through the community engagement piece is once you have the buy-in from folks like Robin, they're your ambassadors for people that may not naturally want to be engaged. So I think when you're talking about obstacles or challenges, once you have that buy-in and someone who's already engaged saying, hey, come along, I'm a person who believes in pulling the next person up. So someone who might be like, I don't know if this is for me, and then they recognize, like Robin saying, she's like, I came in with one vision, and then all of a sudden I recognized it was also a personal thing for me. I think when people know that you might have you come in for one reason, but you might be engaged in so many different areas or feel inspired by different people that you want to then continue to be engaged throughout not just this process, but go what's next, right? And I think I feel fortunate to have a partner in Becky Sears and what she does at the Senior Center, that folks feel like they belong and do want to be engaged in different things in their own way. So I think when you talk about obstacles and that engagement piece, it is difficult because you have to have the ability to do so. You have to have people looking for you, and you have to want to do it. So my job is to try to seek those people out or find ambassadors who can gather those people, which is a great challenge to have because you're bringing more people into the fold.
Yeah. Adrian, I love what you said about ambassadorship, right? Because government mistrust is real right now. It's so real for always. And we have a lot of growing edges as we continue to do this work. So if you look at the posters, we are very well aware that the representation is overwhelmingly white. The program is offered in English, which means it's not accessible to the state as a whole. And the goal of all of this is to think about, who's not coming to town hall when there's a public hearing, when there's a survey. So, with this great attention to celebrating everyone who's at some level of engagement, and there's always the opportunity to deepen engagement, this idea of where are the points of trust and the community centers of power, and how do you use those relationships to then grow and reach populations whose voices are so important and are not part of the conversation. So that's our continued commitment in this work, and we're just so grateful to be at this moment and to keep doing it. I want to go back and answer the question about what you do next, but Adrian, Nancy, and Robin, thank you so much for not just your participation, but your thoughtfulness and for sharing your experience today. So in terms of next steps, and Karen will put these links, since they're not clickable for you on the screen, into the chat. So the first thing you can do is continue showing up to these spaces. Our next Age Well Academy is in March, and we'll talk more about a kid's book about ageism, which is another pathway to deepening conversations about ageism in your town, particular to this question of how do we get people who are not the oppressed population, right? If I'm an older adult and I'm experiencing ageism, I have a deep vested personal interest. But how do we create a conversation around this across the lifespan? Kids' book about ageism is one answer. We'll talk about that more. At the beginning of the conversation, we talked about our conversation guide. So the Every Age, Every Ability statewide campaign. You can download a packet of the posters as well as conditions for creating safe space for conversation and then questions that you can ask. So that's something all of you could do at dinner tonight, even if you have somebody in your life that you can engage with and want to know what you did today. Fun way to spend a few minutes or more if you go deep. And then lastly, there are lots of different programs that we do, and I can summarize them in a minute, but in the end, we want to meet each town where you are, and we want to identify your point of passion. So you can schedule, we have 30-minute slots. It would probably be 15 minutes, an initial call to think about what's right for your town. But the primary spaces of engagement is we have a 2.5 hour workshop called a Daring Dialogue. Some of you have participated, where it's an opportunity after you've used perhaps the conversation guide to really go deeper. And it's an experiential workshop that's maybe different than something you've participated in. We're so conditioned to think that answers are on the outside. This is an introspective activity where it's really looking at our own internalized beliefs and our own biases and about exploring what's unconsciousness and bringing it to the forefront so that we can then move through the world with greater awareness and intentionality around what we actually think about growing older, which it's surprising sometimes what's in there until you do the reflective work. And then the Community Leaders Fellowship Program, which Adrian, Nancy, and Robin spoke about, is a year-long experience for towns who are really interested in digging deeper. So those are all pathways to participation and more, but again, best to schedule a conversation with us so that we could tailor our support based on what's best for you as a community. So I want to honor everyone's time. It's now noon and want to end with this quote. If you don't like something, change it. And if you can't change it, change the way you think about it. So all the different ways that we can be change agents. Thank you so much. I wish you all a wonderful day, and thanks for coming today. Bye, everyone.
Connecticut, we age well, we age well, we all can. In Connecticut, we age well in every town across the lifespan. We all gather wisdom in our open hearts, growing stronger when we all belong. Opportunity in community, including everyone, is where it starts. In Connecticut, we age well, we age well, we all can. In Connecticut, we age well in every town across the lifespan. Got complete streets we can get around, housing choice and public space abound. Join our progress toward equity, deep connection and inclusivity. Visioning the future, we listen and we learn. Let's go where we grow all life long. When we feel seen, you know we're shining bright. When we honor choice, we know we're living right. Follow all to chart systems change, to make places we can thrive. We'll plan and zone together, dance here every season is good, it's so good, good to be alive. In Connecticut, we age well, we age well, we all can. In Connecticut, we age well in every town across the lifespan. In Connecticut, we age well, we age well, we all can. In Connecticut,